Hi everybody, thank you for joining us for this webinar. We're going to talk about how to design effective online group projects. Online group work is definitely an important part of academia, and so I'm excited to touch on this topic. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make, you can go ahead and enter those in the GoToWebinar questions box or in the chat window. On the call with me is Thad Stott, our instructional technologist, and so he'll be available to field any questions. And I'm hoping to have some time at the end that we can open up the microphones and talk about our own, what we're doing in the classroom that's working well, maybe brainstorm some ideas. But I do have some content to present at first, so I'm going to go ahead and get into that. Oops. Exit out of the PowerPoint. First of all, I'm not going to be in Canvas. I actually did this in Prezi, but we are going to dive into a Canvas course. So we're looking at how to design effective online group projects. First of all, I have this image. This represents all of the students, their reactions when they found out that there is group work to be done in the class. They're usually thrilled about it. They're happy for the challenge and excitement of being able to collaborate, rely on other people, and really put in their work. And whenever you say, we have a group project, who wants to participate? This is typically the response you get, right? People put both hands in the air and they're just thrilled, beyond measure. Because this is what group work, it's supposed to teach us. It teaches us how to communicate with other people and take on responsibilities and collaborate. Most of all, it teaches us teamwork. And so that's why group projects are so good. So that's ideal in terms of academia. That would be great. This is what group projects really teach me. Above all, trust no one. People have been burned by group projects before. Like this meme says, not sure if I hate group projects or just hate the people in my group. So most, yeah, ideally people would be excited, but most students are pretty jaded about group work, and they're not thrilled about it, and sometimes teachers aren't thrilled about it either. And so some of those frustrations we're going to address in this presentation and talk through it, talk about how we can construct effective group projects and really espouse that concept, because group work, in reality, it's very important. It's important in academia, in classes, as well as the workplace, in communities, in society, even within our family. Our families are groups and our group of friends, and we have important roles to play. So projects, what we call projects in our courses, it's really a vital part of life. And so we want to make it as efficient and effective as possible. You may have seen this headline from, the news last week in the chronicle of academic anecdotes. There's a social loafer that was identified somewhere in one class at another institution, probably not one of our institutions, right? It was another institution, but there was a social loafer, and the student didn't do his or her own work. They didn't contribute well enough to the group assignment. In reality, social loafing is incredibly common and unfortunate. Another synonym for social loafer is the free rider. Free rider has that term has its base in economics, but has been espoused by psychology as well. So social loafer, free rider are kind of interchangeable. In economics, the free rider problem occurs when people benefit from resources or public goods or services that they don't pay for. And in economics, this can result in under provision of goods or services. There are some examples of a free rider in societies. In terms of oil production, Norway and Saudi Arabia have very good oil production, and as a result, the government subsidizes living stipends to the people within those countries. And that's over the years, that's kind of introduced um, a sense of entitlement across society, which can be harmful. That's not a great thing. In research, we've looked at studies done with rowing machines, where you hook somebody up, a participant in the study, up to a rowing machine and measure their capacity, their strength and force and speed and stamina over intervals of time, and you can generally detect what their output is capable of. And then they'll replicate this study, and they'll put them in teams, the rowing teams. And so they might be among 4 other individuals, 3 or 4 or 5 other individuals, and they'll measure the group output. But in secret, the researchers are also measuring the individual output, and sometimes they'll find, in fact, quite often they'll find that the individual output is less than when they are rowing by themselves. And not to say that they're not putting in any effort, but just being part of a group, there tends to be that phenomenon of the free rider, the social loafer. Now, in academia, the social loafer would be an underperforming group member who reaps the benefits of the accomplishments of the remaining group members when they personally put in little or no effort. And this is also dangerous, the social loafer, for obvious reasons, but in parallel with the social loafer concept is the sucker effect. And this concept is essentially when good students don't want to be suckers into doing all the work, so they decide not to contribute to a task when they see others are loafing, other free riders. They sometimes even choose to fail instead of carrying the load for everyone, and that's not what we want. In fact, that would be disastrous not only for the group, but for all the individuals, for the assignment, for the curriculum, and accreditors wouldn't look too favorably at that kind of behavior either. And ultimately, that is important for us too. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about best practices for effective groups, platforms that we can use, and we'll dive into Canvas and look at how to do good group projects. All right, so let me get into some best practices. And in reality, all of these will have an asterisk because there isn't one set of best practices that you should always espouse for every single group assignment. Every assignment's different. It depends on the learning objectives and the course material, of course. But generally, these are some guidelines that you might consider. Have a clear purpose and goals. This is important because you need to, with every assignment, not just group assignments, but especially with group assignments, you really need to demonstrate the value of that group assignment. What is the goal of this, and how does that really demonstrate value personally for each person, as well as in their academic careers, as well as professionally, maybe even socially, although really what we're trying to teach is the academic and professional, get them into careers and into that stage of life where they're good enough. Manageable size, I put here 3 to 4. In terms of the research that I was doing, reading all kinds of case studies and blogs, and I mean there isn't empirical research saying that 3 to 4, with a p-value of 5 is empirically the best, but that seems to be an ideal number. More than that, and you get students who might get lost in the numbers and increase the chance for social loafing. A group of 2, and that's a paired assignment, and there is a place for that. But really, 3 to 4 is a good size for people to be accountable to each other and responsible and held responsible by their team members. Operating guidelines is a good practice. Have the team, this would be before they even start with the actual group work, have them draft a team charter, have them establish forms of communication, responsiveness to communication, timelines, responsibilities of team members perhaps, or what the group wants to accomplish. You don't necessarily want to write that for the students and hand them a charter and say, here, abide by these, but start the collaborative effort right before the assignment and have them establish that yourself and present it. And I've had groups where that's part of the assignment is we're going to have a long group project that's going to last the entire class. I want you to have a team charter, and you have to submit that to me through Canvas, and I would actually grade it. It would be a nominal grade. It wouldn't really matter, even if the student was on the cusp, but and I wouldn't say, okay, you get an 8 out of 10. It was a check mark. If you did it, then you get a check mark, and you get your 5 points in a class that has 500 points. So it doesn't really matter, but it tells them that this is important and that there's a slot in the grade book for this. So it's important to me. Communication. And this is where, as a professor, you have to help them realize that they need to be responsive to each other. And you need to tell them, I always tell my students, you're responsible for checking your institutional email address, your email accounts, whether that's your at Saybrook or at Chicago School .edu email. If you'd like to push it out to other form, if you want it to push it out all your correspondence to text messaging or Gmail, that's great too. You can set that up in Canvas, but it's important to be responsive each day to respond to your teammates, to respond to the teacher. For announcements, I have them subscribed so that as soon as I push out an announcement, it pushes out to all of their accounts automatically, so they get it more in real time. So types of assignments, I put an asterisk there. I think that this is really important. You can't just create an assignment, any assignment, and make 3 or 4 people complete it and call it a group assignment. If it's really an assignment that can be done by one individual, then it's really an individual assignment and it's not a group assignment. A group assignment specifically needs a collaborative effort and different responsibilities, different aspects of the assignment that needs to be completed in conjunction with each other and turned in, Gestalt theory, it needs to be turned in with the sum of all these parts. And so just keep that in mind. If you remember only a couple things from this entire session here, remember that if the assignment can be done by one person, then it's not a group assignment. And so effective practice would be to go back to the learning outcomes, the learning objectives for that module, and create something that would really foster group work. Now, recognition of individual effort. This can be done periodically throughout the term or throughout the duration of the project, but let people know how they're doing and give them positive reinforcement. And part of this, it also goes back to how you create the assignment, that you need to be able to see individual contributions. Ideally for a group presentation or a group project rather, the end goal is not to just have one deliverable, but you're also looking at the process and you want to see people's contributions. You want to see drafts, and there are different ways that you can do that we'll talk about. Incentives and penalties essentially comes down to the grade book. I mean, students do things because of the grade book, and so one thing that I do is I like group projects that span many weeks, not just this week you're going to do something. There's not much time for the forming, storming, norming, performing, all the aspects of group work that we like and study about. And so I give them several weeks for a group project, and I have benchmarks, regular benchmarks and performance checklines, and I have students even assess each other's performance, evaluate each other's performances, and I recognize that, and so I have check marks that are in the grade book periodically. They're low stakes, I call them, low stakes check marks, but it just makes sure that people are on task, and it makes sure that at the end they're not throwing something together and very few people are doing the work that many people should be doing. And this goes back to what I was just mentioning about semester-long teams. And I would say, let me say that in a moment, but I find a lot of value in having longitudinal teams. Establish them early in the semester. And that depends. If you're online versus on ground, you might have an 7 or 8 week course as opposed to a 16-week course. But whatever constraints you're given, try and give them time. Try and have some project that's meaningful, that spans several modules, several weeks, and that can really be cumulative, that they can be adding to this project as they're learning the concepts throughout the course, and not just something that is, okay, this week on Monday, I'm going to pair you up with people. On Wednesday, I want a draft, and on Friday, work together, and by Sunday, I want the deliverable. It's a very short amount of time for students who generally are pretty busy. I mean, our students, a lot of them are working professionals. They have families. They are very busy, and they have time constraints. And not that they shouldn't dedicate time to classes, because they're matriculated into our programs and need to take it seriously. But we also need to be mindful that group work can be very stressful and time consuming. And sometimes you have students that are on other parts of the world that are on your team, and so communication can be a factor. And so it kind of relieves some of that tension, and it helps the students to really get to know each other. And that's really important, to have that interpersonal dynamics, the rapport that they establish by being on a team and working week after week. And then providing, I kind of mentioned this with the other bullet points, interim feedback and progress reports. Let them know what they're doing right. Let them know if they have room for improvement, then let them know that. But ultimately, the group project, if it's a big group project that's due towards the end of the semester, it shouldn't be a surprise what grade they're getting, because they should be getting feedback throughout, and we should be steering them in the right direction if we see them deviating. And when they're doing well, we should let them know that this is looking good and it's shaping up good, and I want you to continue the way that you're doing this. So those are just some some best practices to consider there. Assigning teams is an interesting thing, and I'll mention, going back to this, we're going to show some of these in action. I'm going to show you some tools that you can use in Canvas and how to kind of walk through a little bit more of the nuances of setting up a group project. So assigning teams is important. In Canvas, you can assign teams, and I'll show you how to do that. And I put here the first point there, selected by professor, not by groups of friends. So that second bullet point is like, maybe don't do this. And I think that, well, I guess there's two ways. You can either manually create the team, or you can have it randomly generated. Canvas can randomly create a team, and after that you can sort that. You can manually sort them and move people around if needed. But what you don't want is people self-selecting teams. From the research that I've read through, research meaning best practices from other institutions and professors, my own experience, nothing empirical or scholarly necessarily, but it just seems like it's not a good idea to have people self-select their teams, because you get friends with each other and you get people left out. And if the professor just takes care of everything, then all of those issues are taken care of. As you're creating the teams, you might consider the benefit of multiple perspectives. And by that, I mean, birds of a feather flock together, but what we want is kind of to disrupt that notion, get people thinking outside their own boxes. And so there are a lot of ways that you can shake that up. You can make sure that the genders, you don't want a boys team and a girls team necessarily, so make sure that's kind of even. You might consider age, age category, professional backgrounds. In my classes, I've had people from all kinds of backgrounds, military and police, HR, executive leadership, social work people right out of undergrad who haven't really established a career. And everybody has a unique perspective. Some people are experts in the content of the class already due to their background. Other people, this is the first time they've ever been introduced to some of these concepts. And so you can really balance that out. And then last thing there, benefits of peer review. And with that, I'm talking about assessment for one, but also people evaluating each other's performance, as in how is this person working as a team? And so there are benefits. There's actually a lot of literature. There's a good amount of literature, empirical studies saying that peer review evaluations in terms of grading assignments and grading content tends to be pretty high. And you can assign peer reviews in Canvas so that a student reviews multiple people, like 2 people. So you can get some inter-rater reliability there as well. And in Canvas, you can have peer reviews being done anonymously, which I think is a good practice. So people don't necessarily know who's evaluating me. You don't want retaliation, or you don't want people, asking favors of palling around. Excuse me. But also the benefits of peer review are that it can help them keep each other accountable. So I've had group projects where I have a rubric that I give, and each week there's a team leader in the group, and that team leader needs to go through the rubric for each student in the team and give me an assessment of how well was their communication, how well was the content that they produced, did they contribute, did they do what they agreed to do at the beginning, and so I have various criteria, and you can come up with something. So each week, the students know that the team leader is going to be evaluating me, and then at the end, I take all the averages and I give them a participation grade. And so they know that it's important to to be on top of the group work, that they need to take it seriously, because there will be an aspect of their final grade that will depend on how well they work with their peers. And so that's a form of accountability. I also put this elephant here on the slide, which we've all heard. You blindfold the people and you put them in a room with an elephant. Some people are going to say, this is a tusk, and so they're going to try and determine, it's hard and smooth and ivory-like. Other people might have an ear or a tail or a trunk. And so everybody has these different perspectives. And when you put them all together, then they can determine, okay, based on all of our experience and the exposure that we have, we can determine that this is an elephant versus something else. So here's some examples of a class discussion. So a typical class discussion, I'll talk about that and then talk about how can we flip this to maybe have some group elements to it. A typical discussion might read, read articles X and Y and write a post, and do that on Wednesday. Respond to 3 other students by Friday, and then throughout the weekend, post responses to the people who replied to your initial post. And that's a discussion. I mean, that's a very bland, vanilla, basic discussion that you might find in academia. And so some alternatives, you might take that and spin it into effective team projects. So some of these that I have listed here have a team discussion. So instead of a class discussion with all 20 students in there, the problem that sometimes we see in class discussions is if the student is one of 20 and there's a professor or 15 students, and they have to write a post and respond to 3 other students, then yes, they'll write their posts, and then they'll focus on 3 other student posts and kind of linger on those threads, and they won't read more than what they need to, just because they don't have to, because a lot of times we don't grade on that. I mean, we can't have them drop their lives to participate 8 hours a day in discussion posts. Not really reasonable. But for large classes, it can be hard to try and keep afloat with every single thing that's being said. We know that because as professors, we're in there responding to every single student, but the students don't necessarily respond to every student. So if you were to break up the class into smaller groups and have that same discussion on the different groups, as a professor, it might be a slight, a little bit more work for you, because then you're going to have to look at various discussion threads. Like if there's 3 or 4 groups, then you have to go to 3 or 4 spaces, but it's not that much work. But then the benefit to that might be that if there's only 4 other students, each student is more likely to read the comments of their other students, and it's a more tight conversation, and it doesn't deviate in so many tangents, and it's not overwhelming to the students, and so it can be more intimate, an intimate conversation between 4 people as opposed to a general conversation between 20 people. And there's a place and a time for each of these types of things. So I'm not saying that every discussion should always be among 4 people and not the entire class, because that would be a mistake as well. Another option, a team member posts consensus posting. That sounds very confusing. Let me explain that. So what this concept would be is you form the students into groups. So it could be group do, re, mi, and fa, 4 different groups. And then you have a class discussion, but each group is responsible for, instead of posting a whole bunch of posts throughout the week, they're responsible for 1 post that they draft among each other. And it could be, you could divide the class into 2 groups, team pro and team con, and say, read these articles, and one group is going to offer an argument in favor of the hypothesis or the thesis. The other group was going to oppose it. And so in that way, you're not going to have a threaded discussion with 50 or 100 responses necessarily. It would be much fewer, but groups of students will be drafting responses, and collaboratively, they will participate as one entity in the discussion thread. And you might even say, okay, so on Wednesday, I want Team Con to post a response by Wednesday at midnight. And then Thursday at midnight, I want Team Pro to offer a rebuttal. And that would give them the entire day to read, to contemplate Team Con's post, and to do some research, formulate their statement, and then post it by midnight. And then 24 hours later, Team Con, so each group maybe could do 2 posts, um, you know, a con and a pro and a con and a pro. And then who knows, maybe at the end you could have a discussion about the discussion that you had. So, that's just kind of throwing that out there as a way to shake up the typical discussion board. Another way would be having rotating leadership teams. And so this is how we typically do discussions, is that the professor curates the discussion. They're in there commenting in all the posts and saying, good job, I think this is very insightful, or, would you consider this or that? And making sure that things are on task, that the students are discussing what they need to discuss, that this all falls under the learning objectives or learning outcomes for that assignment and module. But you can also consider giving that responsibility to teams or individual students and say, okay, so this week you're in charge of curating the posts. And so in that week they would take a much more active role. They'd be much more engaged in the discussion, and they would be in charge of leading it, offering the probing questions and doing the work that the professor usually does. And of course the professor isn't just going to kick back on the beach for the week, but we'll be there and maybe guiding and mentoring the students. And I think that this concept is especially interesting considering that we have students who want to go into academia. They might be studying IO psychology or clinical psychology with the thought that perhaps they want to practice in the real world, or perhaps they also want to go into academia, maybe part-time as an adjunct, or maybe they want to become a professor. And so sometimes we go through designing the curriculum in a way that we make practitioners, when in reality we want to also focus on the scholarship and the academia portion and teach people how to teach, because maybe that's a valuable experience as well. So I believe that was the last for this portion of the presentation. So I'm going to jump into a course, and I'll go ahead and put the link to this in the chat. This should be a public course, as in everybody within our institution should be able to access this. So yeah, it's visible, and I believe it's published. If you can't get into this course, let me know. You need to log into Canvas with your institutional credentials, but you should be able to have this. And it's just a playground that we're going to tinker around with real quick. So I wanted to showcase a few platforms that I think are interesting that lend to good teamwork and good online group projects. And this is not comprehensive at all. I just didn't want to overwhelm people. I've already talked quite a bit, but I wanted to make people aware of these. So Flipgrid is interesting. Some big news as of just a couple weeks ago. Flipgrid was acquired by Microsoft, or at least in partnership with Microsoft, meaning it used to be a platform that it's free, but you can pay for premium features. Now with our educational discounts through our credentials, we're able to access Flipgrid, and it's integrated into Microsoft, just like our Microsoft Office 365 accounts. We all have access to Flipgrid. And so that's pretty exciting news, because usually we'd have to pay for the premium license, but Flipgrid is giving all of the academics access to the premium content for free. So this grid is locked. This isn't one that I created, but I thought it would be interesting to showcase. So it has a password. This is for a conference that I'll be attending in a couple weeks. It's a Canvas user conference. And so they're asking, they theme the conference every year. They make it pretty silly. Sometimes it's 80s themed, or last year it was spy, like 007, so they call it 0017. And so everything was spy. This year it's carnival themed, which I think is probably the most silly. But so this is a Flipgrid that they created, asking the Canvas community, the people who are going to the conference, what's in your suitcase? Are you running away to the circus, and what are you packing? Just kind of a fun way for us to kind of get to know each other beforehand. And so I created a little video that I shared with people, and make sure I'm muted there. But yeah, so I talked through what I'm bringing, make sure you bring, sunscreen and whatever, because it's up in Keystone. And other people comment on what they're bringing and it's just like 1 minute. Each of these is like a 1 minute video, and then you can have links, people have viewed, and you can like it or love it, I guess. So that's a good way. This is kind of a silly application, but in academia, this could be a collaborative way for people to share ideas, and you can have it moderated, give them a code, and you can embed it right into Canvas as well. And just let's see, I just got an email. So Flipgrid is just go to flipgrid.com, and you should be able to go to this educator login, and you should be able to log in with Microsoft and just use your credentials that we have. So your Chicago School or pacificoaks.edu credentials, and you'll be able to log in that way, and then you can start creating your grids. I have one, and it's kind of this Flipgrid is also used in K-12, and so but I don't want you to think that we can't use it in higher education. We very much can use it in higher education. It has a little bit of iconology, I would say, that might seem juvenile, but it's how you set up the assignment that really matters. So consider that, and it embeds cleanly into Canvas. They'll give you some embed code. I can show you what that looks like as well. They'll give you an iframe, and so you just copy that. In fact, I'll do it right now. I'll delete this. I'll delete this content, edit it, and so I can have my other content. My assignment details, and I can have content under there. Place the cursor where you want the Flipgrid, go to Insert Media and Embed, and then you'll grab the embed code from Flipgrid and paste it in there. And it's going to look kind of gibberish, like if you're not familiar with this, but just paste it as is. Hit OK, and you can save. And that's how you can get the Flipgrid right in your Canvas course. So that's one aspect that I'm not diving too far into the platform, because that's not really the purpose of this webinar. It's just giving you a tool that might help with the assignments. Padlet is another one, and I hope that people have explored Padlet. I really like Padlet. I think it's fundamentally changed many of the assignments that I have taught, and led to just peaks in student engagement. I think it's really great. So Padlet is kind of like a Pinterest board, but I think it's better for academia, and it's more flexible. So at the beginning of the course, I have an About Me page where I introduce myself, but I embed this Padlet every time. So it's a way I can talk about my family, and I have a column here for my work, some fun stuff, pictures here and there, because I want my students, at the beginning, to know that I'm a person, and I have interests and a family and a life, and I'm an interesting person. Maybe they'll find me interesting. But yeah, let them know a little bit about me before we get into the coursework. Here's an example of a Padlet I did this was for a conference, not for a class necessarily, but it was me showing how I can curate the content. So for this Padlet up here, I have content organized into columns, and for this other one, I have just a board, kind of like a bulletin board, full of flyers. So these are all maybe articles or videos that you can read it right here. I could view the post in full screen, or I can see it in another window and just open it in that way. You can play videos as well. So here's a YouTube video of Mitt Romney at Stanford, I believe, giving a talk about leadership. A QR code. In fact, this is a QR code to this Padlet. So if you have your phone and you scan that, then it'll pull up this Padlet on your phone. So videos, articles, pictures, links, you can share a lot of stuff that way. And since I'm the admin in this, you can see I can drag and drop and organize things that way, and you can see the numbers appearing. So there's a sequence. So 6, I can move Mitt Romney up or down. I can move him next to Dan Ariely. And so you can organize it that way. And to add more content, I can click. And by the way, this can be done also on the Padlet page. So I'm in Canvas, but I can add content in Padlet as well. So here I'll put a link to this Prezi presentation. See if that will work. A link to Prezi. I don't know what that will look like. And I did this presentation on Prezi Classic as opposed to Prezi Next. We're really supposed to move towards Prezi Next, but I didn't really want to for this particular assignment. All right, so here's my Prezi, and it's my webinar Prezi. All right, so I've updated that. When I hop back over to Canvas, you can see that it's already right there. So it updates in real time. You don't have to refresh the Canvas page or anything. If I move that to the number 2 place and hop back over here, you can see that happens in real time as well. And so you can work either in in its own browser tab, or you can work right in Canvas. And here's an example of a Prezi that a Padlet that I actually did for a class. And the assignment was we had to read two chapters, and each chapter had several concepts. So we had to find sources on the internet about those concepts, some from each chapter, and share them with the class. And so some of them were YouTube videos, like there's a TED Talk over there, blog posts from industry leaders, journal articles or news articles, or tweets from influential people about the topics, and just share it with the class. So everybody in the class had access to this. It was password protected, and I gave the password on the assignment page so they could come in, they could take one of the columns as their own, and I can see kind of like that point that I was mentioning, you need to be able to see each person's contributions. And I actually participated in this as well. Throughout the week, I wrote some comments and shared some articles that I thought the class would find interesting. And then the assignment was, once the board was curated, we spent a week curating this board, talking about or sharing insights about the different concepts. And then their assignment was to write a reflection paper based on the board, not just based on the stuff that they found, but they needed to read other student contributions, and they needed to incorporate that into an essay, essentially. And then that's what I would grade is their reflection on the week. And it was pretty great. I mean, students really participated. They found some really fun content. And this is so much better than just me as a professor saying, hey, read some of this stuff. It's they really got in, and many of the students went well above and beyond the threshold that I sent in terms of a grade. Or at least what I was expecting, for their contribution to this. And I said, it'd be great if you could do, I don't remember how many, 5 things for each chapter, and many of them did way more than that. And so it was really great, and it was a collaborative project that was unique in that it was the entire class collaborating, and the professor. I was in there collaborating right there with them, as opposed to, we tend to think of group projects as team A and team B, and you have your students that you work with. Consider having just a group project, and it can be a wiki page as well, which is what I'm going to talk about, not next, but 2 from now. So Sway, Dad, do we have questions?
Yeah, just a couple questions on embedding. I'm wondering if you can go through the embed process a little bit slower and just one more time.
I can do that. Let me pull up this Padlet here. So it's and I'm actually going to be giving a conference presentation in a couple weeks, just about how to embed content into Canvas specifically. And it's not always going to look the same, because every site looks a little bit different. But generally, what you're going to want to do on the platform is look for a share button. So right here, I'm going to bump this up a little bit. Right here in the top right corner, you can see the word share with an arrow. And typically it's going to look something like that. Now, if I hop over to YouTube, let me just pull up a video. I'll pull up the last webinar that we did, that actually looks the same. So you see share with the arrow, the curved arrow. So I'll click on that, and I'm looking for embed. So you see various options, a lot of options, but here's share, export, embed. Embed is what I'm looking for. So as I click on that, then I look for the embed in your blog or website. That's the link I want. So I went share, found embed. Usually it's a little bit easier than Padlet. Padlet's kind of the hard one to embed, but it's going to give me a bunch of code. It looks like just absolutely gibberish, but as it is, just copy it. Click that button to copy. In Padlet, I'm going to edit this, and I will go ahead and delete. I'm going to delete that first one, and in the rich text editor. Okay, so AAA. What I want to do is embed that Padlet right underneath those A's right there. And I think the easiest way to do that is insert media, click that button, and there's an embed tab where you can paste the code. So paste, okay, and I'm gonna delete the A. That was just a placeholder so I could see where it is, Akram. All right, so I'll save that, and then you can see the Padlet right there. Now let's go to pages real quick. Yeah, you guys are becoming techies. Let's just practice embedding. Nope, Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Oh my goodness, she was recording a lot. Apparently I said something that triggered her and had a big paragraph there. Let's embed a YouTube video. So let's go to share. There's an embed button right here. I can share with Thad or my brother if I wanted to. Click the embed button. Now YouTube gives you a few options. Show suggested videos when the video finishes. I'm going to uncheck that because I want my students to just see this video, and I don't really know what is YouTube going to suggest. It might be something relevant, but I don't want them to go and all of a sudden they're watching videos of people playing the ukulele in Hawaii because YouTube suggested it and they got caught. I am going to show the player controls. I think that's okay. The title and player actions, that's fine. As I check and uncheck these, it actually changes the code a little bit. So then I click here, and I'm going to copy that as is. Now I could say start at a certain time. I could say start this at 5 minutes. And then you can see 5 minutes is 300 seconds. So you can see right here, it says start equals 300. That's the code, YouTube code telling Canvas that, by the way, you're going to start this 500 seconds or 300 seconds into it. But okay, so I have that code. I'll go to insert media and embed, and I'll just paste the YouTube code in there and click OK. Another option, if you're a little comfortable with HTML, you can go to the HTML editor, and it's the exact same thing. I'll delete that, but that can get complicated if you already have content on there and you have to look for it. And I'll save and publish, and then I have a YouTube video with the title. So I wanted the title, and I wanted the controls down here. And so that's an embedded video. I'm going to talk through Sway, and I can talk and I can show how to embed a Sway as well. So I think so I'm hoping that people do have experience with Sway. I've been a Sway evangelist at TCS for about 2 years now. Ever since I discovered it, I've been preaching it, and I think it's a fantastic way for collaboration. Just because we all have Office 365 accounts, and so we can share our projects with each other, and you can collaborate on the Sway. It's all browser based, so it's in the cloud. It's not something you physically download to your computer and you have to put it on a floppy disk and hand it to them so that they can put it on their computer. It's all cloud based, and so you can collaborate in real time. So this is a Sway that last year I collaborated with some of the leadership at the Chicago School for a board of directors presentation. And so you can see there's information, and you can sort through pictures. I can maximize the pictures as well. I don't know if maybe I shouldn't have gone through those. So we're talking about innovations, and we have various types of slides. So this is embedded. And I can maximize this so it's full screen as well. And I can share this way. So when I click share, it's the same thing. It's the word share, and it's a arrow, like a curved arrow. It's not always going to look like that, but you look for something similar to that. And then grab the embed code. The embed code is usually symbolized by some brackets and a slash. And so I'll click on that, and it gives me an iframe. I can copy that to the clipboard. And then that's the exact same thing that I have right here. And so I'll even show you the HTML. So there's the code. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to paste exactly what I just copied, which is the same thing. Or I can, let's see. I can go into insert media, embed, and I can paste the code right here. Just make sure your cursor is where you want the code to be embedded. And that's how you would embed that. So let me, let's cancel since it's the same thing. Let me open up I'm going to open up the sway from this end so we can see at this interface what it looks like. So you have a storyline, you have design, you can insert elements, you can play it. All of these are cards, and so you can collaborate with other people, and they can be working on a card up here while you're working on a card down there. You can show images and upload images, and you can change the themes as well. So there's a style button here. You can have it, right now I have it scrolling vertically. You can have it scrolling horizontally if you want it to read more like an ebook, because those a lot of times scroll from left to right. You can have it as slides. So it's more like a PowerPoint presentation. One question I happen to see here, how do we get Sway? Go to sway.com and just use your credentials for whatever institution we're at. If you're at the Chicago School or Pacific Oaks or Saybrook, just use your Saybrook credentials or Pacific Oak credentials, and you'll log in just like you would through any Microsoft. So there are various themes. You can explore themes here. You can even randomize it. Just hit remix a bunch of times, and it'll. I think I want to grab another presentation. Since that's a legitimate presentation, I'm just going to grab something else. So what this was is I went to Wikipedia and looked up the wiki entry for psychology and exported it as a PDF and then imported it as Sway. And so I'm going to go to design. So here's what it looks like. It's kind of a theme. It has a canvasy type background. I'll go to styles. I'm going to hit remix a couple times, and you can see it just changes it up for me. Changes the font, changes the format, the background, the look and feel, the color scheme. So you can hit remix a whole bunch of time and just kind of gamble that maybe you'll find something that you like. So maybe something like this. Maybe this is good. And if you want to specify certain themes, then you have access right there. So I can share. I can invite people to view it, or I can invite people to edit. So as you do the group projects, I would say edit. Anyone within my organization with the link, I'll go with that. So this is a unique link, meaning specifically this criterion that people have to be signed in to a TCS account, and if they do sign up and they have access to it, they can edit it. If I click view, it actually changes the link to something different. Or you can specify specific people and put in their email addresses. So the students can choose what they want to do. You can even require a password to be able to view or edit this way. So you can lock it down as much as you want, or you can open it. You can even have anybody with the link can edit it, which I wouldn't suggest, because that means Joe Bob over in whatever country can screw up your presentation. You probably don't want that. But so those are the share settings. So we looked at the concept of Sway. We all have access. Just access it through your credentials, your single sign-on. Same thing. You access the library and Canvas and intranet and portals, and then you have access to Sway. So last thing, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this last one, but just the concept. This is a regular page in Canvas, but the pages, Canvas actually calls them wiki pages, or at least they used to. I'm not sure if they still call them wiki pages, but the concept is that you can set up a page so that students can edit. and it's down here. Can edit this page, role selection. The option, you can choose teachers and students, or anyone. Like if your class is only going to be only the people who are enrolled in the class will have access to the class. So you could choose anyone, or teachers and students can edit. And then you can create a wiki page specifically for one group or another group. And the students can make the changes to that. And so that's an interesting way to set up a collaborative document as well. So I want to go to the people tab. I have some dummy students set up in this course. I'm going to show how to create an actual group in Canvas. I'll have to run through this a little quick. So if I go a little fast for you, this will be recorded and you can watch it on YouTube, and you can slow me down a little bit and review it. I wasn't planning on spending so much time talking about Sway and Padlet. But so I have, how many is that? 7 students in here. I'm going to create a group. So you can call the group whatever, the group set name. It might be midterm assignment or a capstone. Allow self-sign up. I recommended at the beginning, don't check this. Don't let people make up their own groups. Either do it manually or have Canvas split them evenly into groups. So I'm going to have 2 groups, and Canvas will split them up. You can automatically assign a group leader, or you can manually assign a group leader. So I'll just set a random student as the group leader, and I'll go ahead and save that. So you can see Canvas is assigning them. So here's my groups for the capstone. I have 2 groups, capstone 1, capstone 2, and I can rename those to something like, I usually do Team Doe, Team Ray, but I could do maybe East Coast and West Coast. So edit this. East Coast and West Coast right there. And if I needed to put fake student 2 in group 1, maybe change the fake students. So fake student 1 needs to go down there. You can drag and drop. You can see who the group leader is, but I can easily make dummy 2 the group leader, for example, and fake student 3 could be the group leader. And I can add another group as well if I wanted, maybe a Midwest group. I can create that, and I can drop a couple students into that group as well. And then it automatically, it doesn't automatically, so I'll have to set dummy student as the group leader. And so you can change them around. Each group is going to have their own page. And so here, this one has 3 groups. I'm going to visit this page. I'll do that in a new tab so we don't lose this. Okay, so now I am in, this class, by the way, is called Canvas Groups. And now I am in a Canvas group, West Coast, the West Coast group page right here. And I can see the people. Here's the dummy student, fake students 1 and 3. They can have their own discussions. They can share files. They can have their own pages. You can post an announcement, or they can post announcements as well, since it's a group thing. And I want to show real quick, I have an incognito mode, incognito window open here for one of those students. So I'm going to refresh this and go to Canvas Groups. You can see the left-hand navigation, you have the account, dashboard, courses. In addition, since the student is in a group, there's a group tab right here that the student can see all the groups, and they can see West Coast because I just put the student in the West Coast group. And so then they can see all of their resources. And so that's how you can set up groups. One thing I won't show in this webinar, but I really encourage you to look up, is how to do peer review grading. And you can set that up for assignments that students can grade each other's assignments, and they can do so anonymously. And I think that's a really good feature to have. So I'm in the group for this course. I can switch groups as the professor. Students don't have the option to jump around from one group to the next, but I can jump from whatever group I was in to the Midwest group or the East Coast group. And then I can peek into their discussions and such from there. You can set up multiple groups. So I have a capstone group. I can have a midterm group as well. I'm going to split them into just 2. And this time I'll say I'll create the groups manually. All right, so here's the midterm, and I'm going to have group Team Doe and Team Ray. And I'll just drop students into one or the other. Here, let me expand this so you can see where I'm at. Dropping students from one to the other, and I can name this as the leader, and I can name this student as the leader. You can give responsibilities to the leader, and that can change every week. I've had students where, classes where the students are in groups for annotated bibliographies, and every week they submitted a deliverable to me, and they did that from week 2 through week 7, and each week there's a team leader who is responsible for the work, but each person would rotate. One person would be in charge of researching articles, another person would draft it, other people would peer review the draft and make revisions, and so they each have different responsibilities, and then the team leader is responsible for overseeing the entire thing, and then they would evaluate the other students each week and submit I can't remember now, how do I do that? Excel spreadsheet, I think, so that I can keep tabs of their evaluations throughout the term, and then I have a participation grade at the end of the term. So that's how you can do groups. So I suggest Canvas has a great way of managing groups, and so I know I didn't leave us much time for a Q&A, but I'd like to open it up if people have comments or questions. Thad, are there any questions that you've been curating that would be worth bringing up here?
Looks like there's one question that just popped up from Deanna. I think it's Deanna. And then I think Lee might have a comment. And then also Lori has a question. You see those popping up right now?
Yeah, I see them popping up. So Deanna's saying you can set up a final group where all the students come in and share what they shared from their individual group. Yeah, there are different ways you could do that. You could create a discussion post in the last week of the course where people talk about their experiences, maybe. It just depends on what the outcome of that assignment would be. And remember, I mean, from a course development standpoint, this is the instructional designer in me, make sure that whenever you have an assignment that it aligns with at least one learning outcome for the course. And every learning outcome that you have in the course should have at least one assessment paired with it. And so you want to make sure that you account for curriculum alignment, and you don't want an assignment just for the sake of having an assignment. But I'm sure we all know that, but that's just my disclaimer. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to have group assignments and then shake up the groups. And that's another presentation I've given, and I'm at risk of running over, so I apologize, and I completely understand when people start dropping off. But what was I mentioning? Oh, I've given other workshops on different pedagogy approaches, and one is the Jigsaw Method, where you split people into team A, B, and C, and there might be 3 people in each team, and they're responsible for learning content. Team A content, Team B content, Team C content, and once they know that, then you shake up the groups, and you have one group that has 1A, 1B, 1C, and the other group has another A, another B, another C, and then the third group as well, and then they teach themselves. And so that's called the Jigsaw Method for teaching, and that can be effective too. So it's kind of like group work, but then you have other group work on the side, and then you can come together as a class and talk about, from a more holistic approach to the concepts. And it's also a way to get the students to teach each other content so that they become experts in a little thing, but they also get experience teaching others, because that's a good way, a good way to learn something is to teach what you learned. So definitely some things to think about. Lee, I hope you don't mind, Lee, I'll just read this out loud. So with Team Pro and Team Con, I love setting up debates in class and online. I agree. I think good debates, encourages critical thinking and such. It's a bit hard at times with 24-hour windows, Wednesday to Thursday, and multiple assignments, reflections, journals, and other classes to do teamwork for posts for such a short time period. Just have to be responsive to size of group and other workload and their professional private lives. Absolutely, and that's why I'm kind of a proponent of, I think that group work really should be stretched out. So maybe an alternative to have this debate thing would be I was saying like give them 24 cycles, maybe stretch it out to 2 weeks, and give each group 48 hours to respond, because you don't want it to be too long so that it becomes stagnant and they forget about it, or they think that they have too much time and they don't get it done until the last moment. But to as you all know, it's a fine balance because they have lives, so we can't just cram a whole bunch of stuff really in a really tight time frame and expect good work. But we can't spread things out either, or else their lives um, will take priority and they'll push things to the end, and then we still won't get good work. So experiment with that, find the balance, and be mindful that they do have lives, but they are committed to taking your 3-credit graduate course or whatever course you're teaching. They and help them maintain that balance, make it easy for them, but know that they. I don't have to say what I'm saying. You're all in the same world as me, and you know how it is. So these also mention I find smaller groups can handle better than a large group, and that leads to the social loafing concept. If the larger the group, the greater the tendency that people can fall between the cracks and figure somebody will pick up my slack. So that's why I kind of lean towards the 3 to 4 people per group, and I don't like groups that are larger than that. Other questions? Let's see. The YouTube link to our channel is in the chat. Thad shared that. I didn't mention Adobe Spark. I haven't mentioned lots of stuff, but Adobe Spark is a great tool. When two of our colleagues actually presented at the OLC conference, and they did a session on Adobe Spark, and they did a reprise of that in May for our May webinar. So look at the TCS EdTech YouTube channel, and you can revisit that webinar. And yeah, that's a good free tool. Answering other questions. Didn't know if it was similar to Office 365, where the local version has slightly more features. Let's see. I'm not quite sure what that's referring to, but Flipgrid.
Ivan was talking about the app. They actually have a Sway app.
The Sway app?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sway app is phenomenal for what it does. Like, it's kind of a testament of where we've come to in terms of HTML. And that probably doesn't mean a lot to people, but we used to do everything in Flash, and Sway is completely HTML. And so it renders in any app, any web browser, on your phone, on the tablet, and they have apps. And the apps, considering the limitations of mobile devices, I think they're fantastic. Like you could legitimately create a good-looking Sway, on your iPhone or Android phone. So it's worth checking out and exploring. Let's see. I think.
Have you ever noticed user authentication issues in Flipgrid since the transition?
No, and I only started looking into Flipgrid about a month ago when they made that announcement, and so I just logged in I showed you how I log in a moment ago. I just click on Microsoft, and then I use my snoofer. Here, let me. I haven't logged in before with one of my other credentials, so let's explore that, and that might be this might be how we end the session too. So I'm going to go to admin login with Microsoft, and I'll try logging in with my Pacific Oaks, if I can remember my password, because it's been a couple months since I've actually logged in. Snoofer. Why is it? I don't think that's. I think it's recognizing my other.
Yeah, I think with this new authentication system, I think it kind of merges all the accounts together into one authentication, doesn't it? When they changed this.
It might, and that might affect how I'm doing. Let's see. snoofer. No. It's somehow it's recognizing. Okay, let me try one thing. Yeah, I apologize. It's good. Like these moments are good. The troubleshooting. Sometimes you don't always have a quick answer, but it's good to see the process of. I'm already in Firefox. Flipgrid.com. All right, educator login for Flipgrid, login with Microsoft, because Firefox doesn't know that I've logged in with my other credentials. So okay, that's good. So if that's not my password, then I'm in trouble. Okay, good. No, don't save me. Don't worry about it. All right, so this is my first time ever logging in through my Pacific Oaks credential. So it's essentially pairing Flipgrid with Microsoft, and it's saying we need some permissions. You've just signed in with Microsoft. Microsoft needs to give those credentials to Flipgrid. That's all it's saying, and so I'm going to accept that. Saying, yeah, of course. Almost done, so I'll set up my account. I won't go through this, but yeah, this would be, you just fill out this, and then you get to the Let's Go page, and then I can show you what that looks like, because I'm already signed in over here with my other credential. Complete that page, and then you get to this dashboard right here, and then you can start creating grids, and you have all the premium options because of the educator credentials through Microsoft. So that's how you do that. And yeah, just a side note, I'm not on VPN. I work remotely, and so that's why it had to send me a Duo reminder. But if you're in the office, which a lot of you professors probably aren't in the office on the VPN. If you're on the VPN, you probably don't have to go through that second authentication, is what Ivan is saying. Ivan's IT from Pacific Oaks. But a lot of adjuncts that are on this call, or a lot of professors who work remotely, you don't have the VPN, and so that's why they do the Duo, the app on your phone, for the second credential, the authentication to get in. All right, I think we're wrapping up. I'm just reviewing the comments right now. Thad, we can edit this out when we before we put it up to YouTube. Make me look good, right?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I think we're good. Last call for questions. If you want to be unmuted, we can unmute you and have some dialogue that way too. Otherwise, we went over, and I prepared to not go over, but I think there were some good questions that I didn't want to leave dangling. I didn't actually use a PowerPoint for this presentation. I had some Prezi slides. I'll copy the link in the chat right there. So go ahead and grab that if you'd like, but it's really not, I mean, go ahead and email me if you'd like me to maybe create a PDF of this. Otherwise, it's really just a couple pointers. It's not anything spectacular. And the link to the video, if you want to review, the dialogue, it'll be up as soon as we can get it to YouTube. Sometimes we can get it in the day. Today, I think there's a couple places we might want to hack, and so before we put it, maybe just polish it up a little bit, including me stammering as I'm right now. But yeah, so Nancy, I put the link right in the chat, so that should take you to. Let me test it. Yeah, that should take you to this page. By the way, if you want to embed, a note on Prezi for those, we still have 12.5 people. For those people who like Prezi's going through some growing pains right now that I think it's worth mentioning as we're talking about group work and embedding. So in the past, Prezi was a Flash-based program, and I just talked about how Flash is horrible and everybody's going to HTML, and that's including Prezi, but they were built on a foundation of Flash, and they had to basically scrap everything and build it from scratch using HTML. So that's how you have the distinction between Prezi Classic and Prezi Next. So this is a Flash-based program, and this can embed easily into Canvas. I have the embed code right there. I copy that and put it into Canvas. I can even change the width and the height of the pixels. I have some options there. But as we go to Prezi Next is the HTML. It's a much better interface, although the user experience, Thad, you'll probably testify to this, that the user experience took a major step back. But
Yeah,
back end, from the developers, the programmers, and the future of the platform, they had to do some necessary steps. And as of like a week or two ago, I don't think that there's a way that you can embed this Prezi other than going to a custom building your own iframe, but it's not the same as how it used to embed. So that's something they're working on, but they have to do leaps and bounds. They're trying to catch up to their glory days where they were, and once they get to that, then I think they're going to be a good platform. But right now, Prezi has some limitations, and I don't know, honestly, as we're talking about presentations and group work, I don't know how Prezi Next is as a collaboration tool in its current state. Thad, do you happen to? I mean, you haven't really collaborated much, but you've worked a little bit. Do you have any insight? Like, is it okay with collaborating, or is it kind of a standalone thing at the moment?
No, I think it would work good for collaborating. Like you said, though, there's still some bugs. I've actually seen just in the within the last couple of months, I've seen quite a bit of changes and updates that they've made to this version, to Prezi Next. But yeah, and when you go into the dashboard, you can collaborate on any of the presentations. I'm not sure though if it shows you live updates. That's one thing I don't think it will show you. I think you have to refresh the page in order to see the updates. So that is a downfall as far as the collaboration goes.
And that's important. Live updates are important. And that's where Sway, Padlet, Flipgrid, like those are all live. Like you can work in real time. Even Office 365. I mean, Thad and I just last week, we were both working on an Excel spreadsheet and having a conversation with each other and seeing each other's comments pop up. It's kind of funny. But one of the questions was, how can we get Prezi? Just go to prezi.com and sign up for the Edge edu account. That's what I have. For if you want to pay them money, then they give you more features. Like, I don't know what, to be honest. And I haven't really. I'm waiting for Prezi Next to really get into their groove, to be established with this platform before I invest too much into it. I did evaluate it last fall. Because we were looking at getting a team license for instructional design and ed tech, and at that point, it's not something that I could endorse or justify the expenses. But I don't anticipate that that's going to be my evaluation forever. I think that they're going to get to a point where it'll be worth investing in. Just at the moment, I go with the free account though.
I think there is a little bit of confusion about Prezi Next. I think it's not so clear that this isn't actually a service that institutions subscribe to, and that if anyone wants to use it independently in their classrooms, then they would need to set up their own account for it, and to pay for the extended features if they need those in their presentations and their courses or classes.
Yeah, we don't have any institutional agreement with Prezi at this point, and probably we're not going to in the near future, not this fiscal year at minimum. So just on your own, you'd sign up for an edu account, but you need to use your edu email address, because that .edu, that's how they determine that you're in education, and they give you a free account that way. And they used to give I think they used to give the edu people like a legitimate paid account, like the bottom paid account in the old classic, but not anymore. Anyway, so any other questions? I think that's all we have in the questions window there, and I'm going over 15 minutes. I really don't want to extend this well into your day, but I'd like to thank everybody who participated, and you can look for this on YouTube. If I went really fast, I apologize, but we'll have it on YouTube so you can rewind and slow myself down, and so that I'm more comprehensible. And so in 2 weeks, we're going to have a micro webinar. It's only going to be about 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about track changes in Word and how you can do track changes, and kind of the nuts and bolts of that. So I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.